Good afternoon, traders. Shane here with Futures IO, the best futures trading community on the planet. We're pleased to have you here, and thank you for joining us for our 413th webinar event. Coming up in March, we've got the Battle Stations Challenge. The rules are simple. All you have to do is share a picture of your trading desk for a shot at winning some big prizes from SharkIndicators. Also, anyone who posts a selfie along with their desk is eligible for a 50% off discount on Elite membership, so head on over to FIO to check out details and enter the challenge. And all of this is graciously brought to you by today's guest, Jeremy Tang. Jeremy started programming at an early age, and that, coupled with his interest in trading, led him to co-found SharkIndicators, creators of the legendary Bloodhound and Blackbird tools for NinjaTrader. Today, we're going to delve into some real-time development with this 25-year coding veteran. We're going to have a question and answer session with Jeremy after the presentation. The questions usually rack up pretty quickly, so if you've got one, I'd say don't wait. Go ahead and type it into the question box to get your spot in line, and the ones that we don't get to will be posted over at FIO in the webinar thread. As always, this event is being recorded and will be posted on the Futures IO website and YouTube within 24 to 48 hours. For those of you who have never been over to Futures IO, I would encourage you to cruise on over to the site, check it out. We've got a great community. It's an awesome resource. We've also got a ton of great content on YouTube, covering just about every trading topic you can think of. You should definitely check it out. And while you're there, pound that like button a couple times, share it with your friends, and subscribe for all the latest updates. And finally, if you're a social media butterfly, you can follow us on Facebook and also on Twitter at Futures IO. And now, without further delay, please join me in welcoming Jeremy Tang of SharkIndicators. Jeremy, how's it going?
Going great. I just shared my webcam. Hopefully you guys can all see me. I can't seem to see the, I think the Q&A. Just want to see if people can actually hear and see me okay. And if you can, just maybe type something. I'll see if I can find this, this Q&A section in here somewhere. Or I might not have permission to view it. Let's see.
Yep, they can hear you just fine. Did you want to do it? Did you want to do Q&A during the session, or you want to hold it off until after?
No, it's, well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind some kind of instant feedback. I do have a couple interactive questions, if you will, and that'll help me interact with everybody. But at least right now, all I see is the chat. Let's see if I can, yeah, I don't seem to see anything else, but what I'll do, I'll just start sharing my screen. And actually, Shane, I think I don't even have, oh, okay, you do see it. Okay, there we go. Okay. I promise I'm actually not this incompetent with technology. Okay, great. Okay, do you see my screen? You should see a disclaimer up there right now.
Jeremy?
Yes.
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Great. Okay, thanks for that introduction, Shane. It's always a pleasure to present for Futures IO. It's probably like our favorite community out there with, I'd say, like without a doubt, some of the most sophisticated traders and even developers on there. And so today's topic is going to be probably a little more on the advanced side. Okay, it's not for the faint of heart. I did try to rehearse this by actually typing out code in real time, but the few times I tried it, it just took too long. So the approach I'm going to take is a little bit different today. I've actually pre-written it, you know, so I'm not going to try to make any sort of crazy claims that I could come up with this on the fly in an hour and a half. There's certainly no way. It took me probably the better part of a week, maybe a week and a half with coding and debugging. So what you're going to see is kind of the result of that. But today's topic is actually going to be about doing trade order management in code, and specifically in NinjaScript using NinjaTrader. And I don't see don't see the actual chat, but I guess what I wanted to ask is, let's try this out. I'll ask how many of you guys actually have some experience with NinjaScript, and maybe Shane, you can sort of tell me what people are saying.
Yeah, sure.
And of those,
Some
go ahead.
little slight small amount of writing code. Yeah, beginners. Yeah,
Okay, so
tons.
that's good. A lot of people have some base level knowledge. I'm going to assume that you have a base level knowledge of NinjaScript, as well as I'm going to assume that you know classes, sort of one of the basics of programming in C#, which NinjaScript, of course, is based off of. How many of you guys, when you're coding any sort of strategy or indicator, do everything in like one file? Okay, and while those answers are piping in, I'm going to sort of get right into the topic of what we're doing today, and basically, so I'm not going to really show you today, like, you know, the basics of Ninja scripting even. That's going to be sort of a side effect of the main theme of this topic, which is going to be about software architecture. Now, if any of you guys have been coding for, you know, any number of months or perhaps years, and you're just starting out, and perhaps you have a tendency, as like a lot of beginners do, is to simply throw everything inside of one file or one class. In the case of NinjaScript, typically, if it will be that strategy class that you've created. You'll try to throw all the logic inside of there. You probably get to a point where it starts to get pretty unmanageable, right? And certainly, it's more than possible to do that. The computer really doesn't care how you organize your files and how you organize your code. But at the end of the day, if you don't have your structure organized properly, or so not properly, but in a better way, it becomes unmanageable and becomes very difficult to do things in the future, such as like reuse the stuff that you've already written and probably even debugged and proven to yourself that works. It's also very difficult to add new features, and not to mention debugging, which is what takes up most of the time. So that's why it's very important to actually come up with some kind of design and organize your code in such a way that it is easy to chunk or put into little pieces, so that it's easy to actually manage. And you'll see with the code I've got, for example, just an example that I put together, how much easier it is to actually get a hold of what's going on by basically dividing everything into little pieces. And so this is what I mean by an actual design. All right. I came up with a kind of a simple design, and this is by no means the way to do it in coding. There is no such thing as a definitive way to do anything. It's, you know, there are many ways to skin the cat, and often as a software designer, you're faced with choices between something that is that has some pros and cons to it. And there's no perfect design for what you want to accomplish. There's always some designs that will get you 80% of the way there, and there's some that will be worse, right? So your choices, you're generally sort of trying to choose something that's kind of a good balance between all the different objectives that you're trying to accomplish. So in this case, what we're trying to do is modularize everything so that we can reuse some of these components. And so the way I've got this structured in this example is, let's assume we have in the red box here this strategy. That's the NinjaTrader strategy, and then we're going to create this thing called an order manager, which is going to do the majority of the actual work. And this order manager is going to interact with a couple different components, and these components will help it make decisions and tell it essentially what to do. The first, I'm going to jump ahead and talk about the second piece first. Okay, the signaler, that's going to tell the order manager when to get in. Think of it as like your actual like trade signals. And then the stop loss and profit target handler is going to tell the order manager where to put those stop losses and the profit targets. And it's going to take it one step further, and then it's going to ask the stop loss handler on a continuous basis, where should I put those stop losses? And that way you can create things like a trailing stop loss, and do maybe some other fancier things in the future. And then I've kind of got this catch-all object, which is sort of the rest of the things that need to be decided upon for the order manager to function properly. Things like what is the entry order type, be it a limit order or a market order, when to cancel it, when to get out of the trade. Those are all kind of hooks that I've built in that can that the order manager will look from time to time. Okay, so let's get into the actual code. Okay, all right, so what I've got here is NinjaTrader in the background, and I do have a coding window up here. Okay, so if you're familiar with NinjaTrader, you got the NinjaScript editor. I'm actually going to use a different text editor called Visual Studio Code. It's free, and the only reason why I'm using this is because it just highlights things quite nicely and allows me to. It just looks. It's easier to read. But by and large, the only reason why I'm using this is because it's a fancy text editor. And the nice thing about NinjaTrader is that when you edit this file, those changes, like NinjaTrader is always kind of like constantly looking at the bin custom directory, which is where you put your code. And it's looking for changes, and as soon as you save a file here, it'll update, it'll run the compiler, and you're basically ready to use the new code that you've written. So it's a pretty convenient mix, and it's a good mix if you haven't yet had the went through the trouble of installing the full-blown Visual Studio environment. This is a really good close second. Okay, so these are the five structures. The order manager being sort of the main one. Again, the whole point of this class is that it's going to it is going to manage the actual orders themselves, but it needs to be told what to do. And what's really cool about delegating the decision making off to other objects is in the future you can actually swap that behavior in and out. So for example, the first example I'm going to show you is just how all this code implements a really simple trailing stop. And you might be like, well, whoop-de-doo, a trailing stop is, what's so exciting about that? And I'll agree with you, it isn't very exciting, but with this kind of design, you have the ability to just swap out the stop loss handler, put in another one, and I'm going to show you how quick and easy that is. And we're going to actually do something a little more fancier. Okay, so the order manager, and these are, by the way, interfaces. Okay, so if you're not familiar, I should say, with object-oriented design, an interface is kind of like, think of it as like a skeleton structure of what a class would look like. And if you define these interfaces, then you're able to define how these objects will interact with each other. And so this order manager will handle all the position updates, all the execution updates, the bar updates as well, which the majority of work is going to happen. And then you start the positions by simply running or executing this method called start position. Likewise, these profit target and stop loss handlers, like I said before, think of them as essentially we're delegating the responsibility to another object, which could be anything. In this case, what we're going to do is implement a really simple offset profit target, like maybe 10 or 20 ticks from the fill price, and that can be encapsulated in this little method here in a new class, and then we can plug and play. We can plug it out another, take that out and put another one if we feel like it in the future. And the same thing will be with the stop loss handler, except the difference is we're going to actually try to update the stop loss on every tick, and that will let us do things like trail the stop properly. And the signaler is likewise going to be just simply telling us when to get in, when is it appropriate to actually start a position. So if you think about it, with these kind of components, and if this plug and play type of design, say you write the strategy up and you have this structure done. Now what you can do is, once you've kind of got it all debugged and all working, is one day you decide, I'd like to have my entry signals follow this XYZ logic, right? The only thing you need to change, only thing you need to do is create a new iSignaler class based off of this interface, and then swap it in, and voila, you've now got a brand new strategy with a new signal. Okay, so that's kind of the main benefits of having a design like this. So let's look at the actual strategy, the NinjaTrader strategy. All right, this is a very basic one. As you can see, the actual code, you see on this top right, it's kind of not really legible, but you can see how long it is. Most of this stuff is just like configuration stuff in the on-state change during the set defaults, which is you know, sort of configuring the default parameters for the strategy. But the actual strategy itself is a pretty small file. So I'm going to just kind of open up these, at least the important ones here. And you can see it's actually pretty short, because what it's really doing here is it's delegating the responsibility off to this order manager object, which we create up here. And we do that on the data loaded state. Really, you could probably put it in configure, maybe even historical if you want. It doesn't actually really matter. The point is you have to create it at some point before the actual signals are required. And as you can see, I've got an implementation. We just call it entry signal 1. And for this example, all I'm going to do is a very simple bar direction signal. In other words, if the bar is like down, it's going to do a short trade. The bar is up, it's going to do a long trade. The whole point of this is I just wanted to generate some signals so you can see how the orders are being managed. In here, we actually create the order manager object itself. And if you look at the order manager, okay, so this is the constructor. This is which is the method that creates the object itself. We're actually passing it the components that are going to use to drive the logic. The stop loss handler, the profit target handler, the strategy algorithm, and the strategy. The strategy, really, that's just there so that this order manager can properly delegate the properly execute, you know, the creation of orders and that sort of thing. You actually need to call the strategy to do that. But as you can see, all its behaviors are really going to be determined by these 3 objects here. And what I've also done here is, if you notice, I didn't just simply create new objects and pass them into the order handler. Instead, what I've done is I've created what programmers like to call factoring methods. And you might ask yourself, well, that's kind of silly. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just simply put the create a new trailing object and stick it in there like up here? And the reason why one would want to do a factoring method is because perhaps you do want some logic behind the creation of these objects. I'll show you an example of why we'll get into that in a moment, of why that actually has some advantages to it. Okay, so again, there's many ways to skin the cat. This is by no means the only way to do it, but that's the way I've done it, just to show you kind of how to structure it in such a way with flexibility in mind. The other thing I kind of want to go over is this. If you recall, okay, so I'm going to go back to the 5th object, the one I call the catch-all object. Okay, the strategy algo. Okay, it just basically has the configuration, if you will, of how the strategy is going to execute in terms of what kind of entry orders it can have. It was basically, you know, the catch-all for things I really didn't have a classification for. So I just put it into the strategy algo interface. And then, because the interfaces are pretty cool, and that you can actually have any kind of object implement this this interface. So instead of creating a new object, what I did was I simply made the strategy itself the iStrategy algo, implement the iStrategy algo interface. And what that enables me to do is, if you look near the bottom here, is I can actually expose some of these parameters and these properties to the user via the strategy. Okay, so I actually have a entry order type, which the user can select, and you can actually type in the quantity, and you can see that. Right now, the entry order price is simply just going to be the last price or the close price on each tick. That's really just the last price. And then the exit position, this is sort of a callback, if you will. The order manager is going to call, you know, should I exit? Should I exit? Every time it's like sort of in the on-bar update when it's in an active position. And at this point, we have no logic to initiate an exit. But if you want to put one in, that's where you would put it. Okay. All right, let's go into the actual. This is where the magic is all happening. It's in the order manager. Okay, so this order manager object. So if you imagine you get to a point where you've written this order manager object and you've got to in such a way that it's, you know, you're happy with it, and you've debugged it and you've vetted it, you can now take this order manager object and you can throw it into any number of strategies that you may run in the future. So this is a great way, again, to reuse your code, is if you chunk it up like this. And as you can see, I've put them all in different files. And this is another way so that you can share this. You can actually share this order manager file, or this order manager object, if you will, with multiple strategies. And the cool thing about that is if you have a bug and you need to fix it in one spot in the order manager, you basically fix it everywhere. So how cool is that? This is why code reuse is actually a really useful thing. Okay, so the way the order manager works is actually very similar to the way your NinjaTrader strategy or your NinjaTrader interface, or sorry, indicator works, in terms of it maintains a state. And this state is think of it as like, what is the order manager trying to do at the moment? Okay, so at the bottom there, I've highlighted the different states that I've programmed this object to handle. The first one's the flat state, which is kind of your default, nothing's happening. The second one is the placing position state, where it's trying to place a position, meaning it's going to submit the entry order and it's going to wait until that entry order is filled before going on to the active position state. And as soon as it enters the active position state, it will issue the profit targets and stop losses, and it'll stay in that active position state until it's closed out the position, and then it'll revert back to flat. I have a separate state called force close, which at the moment is only used internally, but can also be exposed if you'd like, which will try to kill all the positions, all the orders that are currently active, and then try to get back to the flat state. Okay. All right. So the first, the way I've organized things is I have kind of two main areas where work is being done. One is at the point of time where the state is being switched, and that's where it does a one-time kind of action, if you will, and then once it's in that state and kind of up and running, the onbar update takes over and it does the work that is needed to be done on each tick that comes in. Okay, so let's take a look at what this looks like. If we do a place position, okay, so actually let me just jump around. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so this start position call, which comes from the strategy, right? Or you basically what happens is the strategy looks at the signaler, and the signaler says, "Yep, go in," and then it just calls the start position. You could very well tie it into maybe a button or something like that if you feel like it. The only thing it does is it just switches the state to the place position state, and that's where the real work gets done to initiate this current state. Right. So as you can see here, when it enters the placing position state, it figures out what the entry price is going to be based off of a delegation. So it asks the strategy algo, give me your entry price. And if you recall, that's one of the objects that it's delegating that work to, and it can be anything, right? And so if you remember, I showed you the code in the my custom strategy, where this simply just returned the closing price. Okay, so then it's going to submit an entry order, and it's going to use the entry order type, again, from the strategy algo. Okay, so if you haven't already noticed, I am using unmanaged, the unmanaged mode in NinjaTrader. And that's simply because there's plenty of examples out there on how to use the managed approach. It's the way NinjaTrader has it, it's a really simplistic kind of way to put orders on. So if you don't have to be sort of tied in with the business end of managing all these orders and that kind of thing. But I figured to give you guys the most kind of value in this kind of presentation, I would show you something a little bit more advanced on how to actually code using the unmanaged mode in NinjaTrader, which allows you a lot more fine-tuned control. And I would say for sort of advanced stuff that you want to do, believe it or not, it's actually easier in the end to use this to use the unmanaged mode. But you kind of have to know what you're doing too. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Okay, so how do we know this is an entry order? Well, the way the unmanaged orders work is you have these order actions. You're telling NinjaTrader two things: whether you're initiating a long position, or initiating a short position, or closing a long position, or closing a short position. And so they have these different order actions depending on what your intention is. And so in this case, we want to initiate a position. And so there are two choices, to buy or to sell short, depending on which direction we're going. And that's what this line is. Once the position has been placed, the on-bar update will start firing. And we're going to run this code pretty much until we see a fill, until we switch over to the active position state. And if you look at this code, all it's doing here is it's just simply asking the strategy algo, do I need to cancel the entry order? Do I need to cancel the entry order? Every ticket's being asked this. And at the moment that the algo tells it, yep, cancel it, we're done, it tries to close the position off, go back to flat state. Okay, so if you want to look at that actual implementation, just for an example, this cancel entry order, this is the implementation of it in the strategy. And basically all it's going to do is if 30 seconds have gone by and you still don't have a fill, it's simply going to tell it to cancel the order. Okay, now how does it actually switch? Well, the way it works is because this object gets a hook into both the execution and the position update calls right from the strategy, is it's going to monitor if there's an actual fill on the entry order, right? So it's going to look at the order action and determine, is this an entry order, meaning is it an order action that's to initiate a position, which is either a buy or a sell short, and if so, it's going to test to see if it's filled, and if it's filled completely before it switches over to the active position. And again, if you recall, the active position is where it's going to issue the profit target and the stop losses. Now, can anybody see kind of an issue here? And I wish I could sort of see the feedback, but give it a little bit of thought, okay? Because there is something here that's sort of hidden, and if you're sharp enough to catch it, this code doesn't handle split fills, which of course is a reality, and it only starts to issue the profit target and stop loss only when you get a full fill. Ideally, however, what you probably want to do is actually monitor the split fills as they come in, like partial fills, and issue profit targets and stop losses as you get the split fills. Now, writing the code to deal with that kind of stuff would really complicate things, expand this thing probably way beyond the scope of, I think, what we can learn within about an hour here. And so I just simply didn't bother, just in the name of trying to keeping things simple enough. And you'll see I've also taken other kind of shortcuts like that, and just for simplicity's sake. Okay. Once we go to the active position, as I mentioned before, what the order manager is going to do is, first of all, simply ask, oh, sorry, that's the on-bar update. It's going to issue the profit targets and the stop losses. And as I mentioned before, to do that, it's going to delegate those calculations off to those other objects to do that. So as you can see, it's asking the stop loss handler, where should I put my initial stop loss? It's asking the profit target handler, where should I put my initial profit target? And then once it's got those two numbers, generates an OCO, and that's of course just to make sure that the broker knows that if one orders out there and it cancels, the other one will cancel. If one fills, the other one will cancel, and that way you don't get overly filled in both directions, which is not what you want. And then it submits both orders to the broker. All right, and that's basically what the code is there. Now notice the actual order action now is different. Okay, these are what we call closing actions. The order action.sell is a closing action, closing the position for a long position, and the buy to cover is a closing action for a short position. All right, clear as mud. Okay, so now imagine we're in an active position now, and we want to close out the position for whatever reason. Say your strategy algo code says it's time to close it off, because what happens on an on-bar update now is every tick this code is going to be running, and it's going to keep asking the strategy algo, should I exit? Should I exit, right? And that's where you would put some logic in for the exit. And if you do, it will run the close position. Otherwise, what it's actually going to do is update the stop loss position. And as you can see, it's delegating that once again to the stop loss handler, and asking the stop loss handler, where should I put the stop loss? Where should I put the stop loss? And it spits back a price. And just because this price, we're just not guaranteed. It could be kind of, I wouldn't say an invalid price, but it might have several decimal values to it. We just don't know. We can't sort of take anything for granted. We want to round it to the nearest tick. That actually turns out to be pretty important to do this kind of thing, because if you have a stop loss call like this, and say, for example, you're using an indicator value to calculate it, you're probably going to have some value that is not actually like rounded to the nearest tick. Does that actually bother NinjaTrader? No, NinjaTrader is actually smart enough not to, set, or maybe maybe it does actually send off the broker. In most cases, it will just simply drop the zeros, drop the unwanted decimals. But the thing is, what tends to happen is that change order command gets sent to the broker all the time. So what could happen is, if you don't have a line like this, is you may actually be sending off change order commands to your broker on every tick. And believe me, they won't be too happy with that. That's why we have something like this, okay? All right, so let's go over the force close, because there's kind of an important point I want to bring up here. Okay, so, and this is kind of where strategy development does get pretty tricky. It's really not for the faint of heart. But if you're passionate about this kind of stuff, this is sort of, I guess, the fun part, right? So if you're closing a position, this method here attempts to just clean a slate and get back to kind of clean slate. And so, you might be in an entry, or you might have an entry order on, you might have some stop loss orders on, you're not sure, okay? But what is definitely possible, and this is something that you probably won't even detect using a simulator, is that you can ask the strategy to cancel an order, but because another computer on the broker side is actually running and has your order live, it fills. Okay, so here's a little diagram of what I mean. Okay, this is your computer over here. That's the broker. They're two completely independent machines, obviously. And so you can't be guaranteed what your orders are actually doing. And it is definitely possible, but by the time that your code is decided, I want to cancel this order, at the exact same time, the broker has actually filled it, but hasn't had the time to report it to you yet, or maybe it has, and it's just in a queue, and NinjaTrader is like getting ready to tell your code that it's been filled, but it's too late. You've already issued the change order, or the cancel order command. Now, you may think, well, what's the big deal if it fills, and you're trying to cancel it? Well, you can get into what's called an overfill error. Okay, so if you imagine this closed position method is trying to clean the slate, and that means it's going to cancel all your exits and your entries, but you still have a position on. So what you have to do is actually issue another order to close out that position. So that's what this line is. Okay, so cancel the orders and then sell or buy to cover your open position. And the problem is, if you got a fill up here, you're already flat. So actually what this line is going to do is not going to close your position off, but eventually you'll get this message back from the brokers, hey, you just opened up a new position. So you're actually be in a reverse position. And this is called an overfill error. This is something that the managed code, the managed mode, if you will, in NinjaTrader also has a problem with, because there really is no like kind of right way to deal with this. And so what has to happen is, and by the way, you might think, well, geez, why don't we just check? Why don't we just check right here? You know, if we're, in fact, you can look at this, I do that. This little line here says, hey, check if the market position is not flat. And if it's not flat, try to close me out. The problem is this line is executing, this method is executing completely independently of the broker machine. And you may check this. NinjaTrader will tell you, yeah, you're not flat, but yet on the broker side, you actually are flat. You just don't know it yet because the broker has not reported it to NinjaTrader yet. So absolutely, you know, there is no guarantee. And even if NinjaTrader did get the message in time, or you know, there's still one line between these two. It could very well fill between those two lines. Like it's more than possible. And in a multi-threaded environment, you know, it happens. You know, it actually, and the tricky thing is you won't actually see this when you're testing this in the simulator, because the simulator is not multi-threaded. It just runs kind of lines in order. And so you will not see this kind of situation. But this is, again, where that occurs. So big caveat I want to put out there is you either need to deal with this manually or write code, such as we have in our product Blackbird, which handles this sort of thing, to deal with it. And that's also another thing I want to just make sure everyone knows. I did write this example not to be used in production, but to teach how to structure your code. Okay, so don't go off using this as thinking that, hey, you'll be cool using this to trade, because it doesn't handle things like this. And certainly to be able to handle an overfill error, that's also going to widen the scope tremendously of this presentation. I just simply would not have the time to go over how you could, the various ways you could deal with that and get out with it. Okay, so last thing I'll discuss here before we actually try a little demo of this working is I'll show you the actual implementation of the profit target handler, which is just a really simple math formula. Take the fill price, calculate some offset. That in this case defaults to 10, but you can change it, and then that will be the profit target price. And actually, I'm sorry guys, I did not see that. That was for something in the future. Okay. The trailing stop loss is very similar. Takes an offset, puts the initial stop price up there, and then on every update calculates. This is basically the math to trail the stop. Just making sure that it never widens but only tightens itself. And let's actually take a look at this in action. Okay, so let me just minimize that. I did hear the compiler ring just a second ago. I'm going to use simulated data so I can have a little more control over what we're seeing. And I'm going to put the strategy on. All right. Oh, looks like I already did. Okay, let's just take those off just in case. I like to just start from a clean slate there. All right. Notice here I've actually have a little thing where you can choose the type of entry order you want and the quantity. I'm just going to fire that way. Okay. And let's initiate this. Let's see what happens. Now, here's my little speech I would normally make about like how, you know, if you write something for the first time, never expect it to actually work. And that was certainly the case when I was writing this for the first time. It, you know, it took me quite a few iteration cycles to, you know, even this relatively simple example, to actually come up with something that would not bug out. You know, and that's just really the nature of the beast. But okay, actually, you can't see. Oh yeah, sorry. My brain is just jumping ahead. Sorry, I apologize for that. But you can see how the stop is just doing a simple trail, right? It's just going down as the price is going down, and that's exactly what we want to accomplish. And yeah, believe me, it's a pretty cool feeling when you finally kind of get, when you write your code and you get it doing what you want it to do. It's a really neat feeling. But all right, let's close that off. Okay, so all right, so here's where the power of this design comes in. Okay, so who cares about a trailing stop? I mean, that's nothing exciting, right, guys? But with this design, very easily, what we can do is create another kind of trailing stop that follows an indicator. So I've implemented here an Anna Supertrend trailing stop, which is using Fat Tails or Lizard Trader's free indicator that's available on Futures.io. If you're an elite member, of course. And by the way, if you're not an elite member, I mean, there's no excuse. You should get it. Just the value is absolutely tremendous. You get access to all these free indicators. A lot of them are, you know, done by really seasoned developers. So this particular Anna Supertrend is done by a very, very talented developer named Harry. And I've actually got it on my chart here, right here. And the cool thing about this indicator is it actually draws a stop loss line. Now, wouldn't it be cool to test this out to see how effective would your trading strategy be if it followed this stop loss line automatically? So with this design, it's relatively trivial to put it in. I'm just going to implement another stop loss handler, and we're going to call it Anna Supertrend, and it's going to take the Anna Supertrend, and instead of using an offset, it's simply just going to ask the Supertrend, what is your stop line at right now? And that's where it's going to put the stop loss. And then on each update, it's going to move the stop loss exactly where the stop line is, again, using this indicator. So pretty cool. I have some extra protection around here to make sure we're not kind of on the wrong side of the market, to make sure that you have some sort of minimum stop loss that sort of makes sense still, because you know, if you look at the way the stop line is, right, this is a great stop line for a short position, but makes no sense if you're going long because the stop would be above the price. So you do have to account for things like that. And what I'm going to do is wire it into the strategy. And this is where that factory method becomes so handy. Okay, so first, I'm going to define a public property that allows me to select which type of stop loss I'd like to use, trailing stop or an Anna Supertrend. And this is this allows me, when I'm creating the strategy for, on the NinjaTrader interface, to select one or the other. And then all I got to do is change up the factory method so that's a little smarter. So if the stop loss type is the Anna Supertrend, then return that new object, the Anna Supertrend trailing stop that I just created. And I'm just going to put some sort of like just fill in kind of a minimum tick offset, and it's one of the parameters that this object allows me to do. or by default, return the trailing stop handler. Okay, so that's the only place I have to make that change. Save that. Wait for NinjaTrader to compile it. This usually takes a second or two. All right, there she goes. Okay, and let's pop that back on. Okay, now look at that. So I now have a choice between the anti super trend and the trailing stop. Very few lines of code. Pop that on. All right, let's try this out. Let me just kind of get this in a short position so we can illustrate that. Otherwise, it's just gonna look funny. All right. Okay, so that's a pretty tight stop too. I think the minimum stop will probably get it and pop it a little further out.
Order submitted.
Okay, it's the order submitted, but it didn't fill. Right. All right, let me go up and tag that. Okay, actually, just in the name of just in the interest of time, I'm just going to cancel that. Let's try that again. Okay, so by the way, this is by no means kind of robust, right? Like if you have a lot of these exceptions like that, as you can see, I didn't really put any special handling for that. And if an order closes on it, it needs to a full implementation would need to track that properly. And then, okay, there we go. As you can see, the stop is exactly where that stop line is. All right, let me pull this guy down a little bit, and let's go down. We can see we'll just kind of take a look at this line sinks a little bit further south, and just watch it kind of update as we go along. I do believe trading is a lot of waiting, you know, and certainly if you're testing your code out, there's a fair bit of that too. All right, let's scream this guy down south here. Let's try to get some action going here. This is still using the simulator, so. Okay, there we go. If you notice, it popped down. And that's it. Okay, so that's the code there. All right.
Order filled.
Now, I do understand, you know, if this seems like a bit much, you know, but it's really a lot of objects, and it seems like a lot of code, maybe perhaps a lot of extra framework code, if you will. But believe me, if you take the time to put the effort in to building a structure, not only does it become easier to extend, but also to debug as well. Because if there's a problem somewhere, you have a pretty good idea immediately where to look. Now, coding may not be for everyone. I also, again, want to emphasize, do not use, we're going to make this code available for you guys to download and take a look at. Do not use it for actual trading. There's still a lot that it doesn't handle. However, you know, we would be remiss if we didn't sort of at least show kind of our main product, which actually handles all this stuff. Instead of, you know, in my case, it took me about a full week to put this together for you guys, and would still have a lot of time before I would say it's production ready. By the way, don't be fooled by, hey, you know, you might implement something and be 80% of the way there and think, that last 20% is all I, you know, it's going to take 20% of the time. And the truth of the matter is, it's that last 20% that always takes the longest. For whatever reason, that's just the way it is. And so this hopefully will get you on a good starting foot. But for those of you that actually would prefer, instead of maybe spending your time learning how to code and structure and that sort of thing, maybe instead prefer to focus on maybe what you're more interested in, perhaps, is the actual trading and trade systems. So we do actually have a product called Blackbird, which does all this stuff and a heck of a lot more. Like I said, this is only a simple example. So I'm going to give Zach a couple minutes he's going to show you very quickly how we can pretty much put together the exact same thing with a few button clicks there in our one of our flagship products.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. I'm just waiting to switch the screen sharing over to me.
Okay, let's see if I'll stop my screen sharing. And okay, I can make you the presenter, Zach. So let's try that.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yep, got it. Great. So, yeah. Now let me find my VMware. There we go. All right, I'm just waiting for the image to come in. There we go. Okay, cool. So everybody can see my screen now. And again, yeah, unfortunately, Jeremy and I can't see the questions and answers, or the questions thing. So yeah, I'll just trust that everybody can see my screen here. All right, so yeah, so my name is Zach here, and I'm basically in charge of training. So once a week, I host a workshop, where anybody can come in and ask questions, about our software, and then I'll show you guys on the spot, in a live environment, how to answer your, basically how to implement your question, or I'll answer your question, in a live environment. And, mostly, these workshops that we do, let's see if I actually have, usually I have this up and ready here. Yeah, here we go. This just take a second here. Right, so here we go. So I'm the one that hosts these training workshops, and they're weekly. So there's one for Bloodhound, and what I'm going to show you right now is Blackbird. So on Fridays we do Blackbird there. So that's the reason why I'm showing you guys Blackbird here. So Jeremy's the programmer, and I'm actually the software trainer here. So I already have Blackbird up and running on my chart. You can see it on the right hand side, and I'm going to show you in literally just a couple of minutes how to implement what Jeremy did in code, how to implement that into Blackbird in literally just a couple of minutes without having to code. So this is really for those who don't want to bother to learn coding, and just want a quicker, easier way of implementing an automated strategy, or even semi-automated as well. What Jeremy showed you, that strategy, those are designed to be full automated, whereas Blackbird's designed to be discretionary or full automated, whatever you want to do. So here's the Blackbird interface right here. So that allows you to design, your order sets, which an order set is your entry order, right? So for example, Jeremy was using a limit order, trying to get in at the market. So I'm just going to implement a market entry order just to keep it simple here, right? So again, an order set, right, is your entry order plus your profit target, and your stop loss, right? That's what creates a complete order set there. So the first thing that I need to do is basically introduce the trade signals, right? So we're going to use our other product, Bloodhound, to do this. And what Jeremy had done, for his simple little demonstration was he just used a simple bar direction, right? If it was a down bar, then it was going to take a short trade. If it was an up bar, it was going to take a long trade. So I already have something built here, just so we can get it loaded in, right, and get this going right away without spending much time here, right? So really simple logic there, just so we can get some trade signals going. And then let me select my entry signals there, right? So again, Bloodhound is basically what designs the entry signals, right? And then Blackbird can take those entry signals, right, and then execute your order set based on that. So, all right, so I already have the market entry order. set up there. So the next thing I need to do is set up a profit target. And I believe Jeremy just used a simple 10-tick profit target. But just in case, I'm going to go and increase this to a 20-tick profit target like that. So there we go. So there's a simple 20-tick profit target, right? And actually, I'm going to just show you, we do have kind of like a quick list to choose from. Basically this is like the 3 basic ways that most traders will set up their profit targets, right? Either a tick-based profit target, maybe an ATR-based profit target, so you can implement volatility, and then an indicator-based. So it's something like a swings indicator, right? So that's what this is, a swings indicator-based profit target here. So let me just put that back on a 20-tick profit target. So there's that. And then the next thing is the stop loss here. So again, stop losses, there's definitely a lot more ideas out there that traders come up with for stop losses. So we can see the list here is a little longer, but again, this is just your most common stop losses that traders like to use, right? So tick-based, ATR-based. Maybe you want to use, a previous high or low of the bar. Maybe you want to use the lowest low of the last 5 bars or something like that, or just the previous bar low, if you're trading like daily charts or something like that. Right, an indicator-based stop loss. Unfortunately, the super trend indicator, doesn't come with NinjaTrader, so we weren't able to implement that, but that is definitely a popular stop loss indicator. But the parabolic SAR does come with NinjaTrader, right, as a stock indicator. So we have the parabolic SAR there, and then a swing point, using swing points, previous swing low or swing high for your stop loss. And so to do what Jeremy had showed you, right, using the super trend indicator, which you can see on my chart as well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the trailing section here, right? So these are all fixed stop losses. And if you want a trailing version of it, well, you can see this is the same list, but with trailing capabilities here. So I'm going to select the parabolic SAR with trailing here. And then what I'm going to do is kind of set this up the way that Jeremy did, which actually I think Jeremy deviated just a little bit, where I think his initial placement was actually on the indicator. But what I usually end up showing in the training workshops that I do is it's usually a little smarter to let's see here, to create a simple stop loss for your initial location, right, or your initial placement. So for this, I'm just going to set this up as a basic 25 tick stop loss, right? So it's going to start off as just a 25 tick stop loss, and the reason why the reason why we do this is because if we look at my chart now, right, the super trend indicator is in a downtrend. So what if you take a long trade here, right? Well, your stop loss indicator is on the wrong side of the market. So if you take a long trade here, you can't put your stop loss above the market. So right, so you'll generate an invalid stop loss if that happens. But if your stop loss starts off, it's just a simple, fixed offset, then at least you can create a valid stop loss to start with. And then if the market does continue to go up, right, your stop loss indicator will switch directions, and then your stop loss can start following that indicator once your indicator is on the correct side of the market, right? So just kind of as a safety precaution here, it's good to just start off simple and then allow the stop loss to trail your indicator once your indicator is on the correct side of the market here, right? So the next step here is in the trailing actions. I need to replace the parabolic SAR with the AMA super trend, and Jeremy had used the U11 indicator. So there's actually two types of super trends. There's an M11 and a U11. So we're using the U11 there. And in the actions, right, I need to replace the parabolic SAR. So I'm going to open that up. And right there is the parabolic indicator. So let's open that up. And the super trend is one of lizard indicators. So I'm going to open that up, scroll down, and there is the super trend U11. Click on that. And of course, if you want to use, different properties, different periods or multipliers for the super trend, you can change all that here. You can see here's all the super trend, indicator settings. So you can go and, adjust any of that stuff that you want. Let's see here. Yeah, here's a range period that, you can adjust as well. And then of course up here is the base period and the multiplier, things like that. So, and we're going to use the stop dot plot, right? We want the stop loss to follow that stop dot there. And that's it, right? So we just replaced the parabolic SAR with the super trend like that. And also if you wanted to, you could add an additional offset from the indicator. So you could say, let's make our stop loss one tick below the super trend indicator if you wanted to. Maybe to as kind of like a precaution against wicks like this, where sometimes a wick might come down and penetrate through your indicator. So you might want a tick or two offset from that, just to protect yourself against wicks, so you can do that if you want, simply add an offset to your indicator. So, but in this case, we'll just follow that indicator, right? And so there we go. Basically, we just kind of replaced the parabolic SAR with the AMA super trend. But also what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a trigger condition here, because as mentioned earlier, we don't want our stop loss to start trailing our super trend indicator until we verified that the indicator is on the correct side of the market, right? So for a long trade, we need to make sure, right, that price is above the indicator. It's up here above it, right? So if you're in an uptrend for a long trade, right, price is above your indicator. So we're going to do a check for that condition here, and we can compare price versus an indicator here. So I'm going to take the closing price of the bar. Let's open this up a little bit, and we're going to compare that to the super trend indicator. So again, I'm just going to open up the lizard indicators, and there's the super trend. All right, again, I'm just going to use all the default settings, so we're good to go there. And then down here, so if we're in a long trade, we want to make sure that A, which is the closing price, is equal or above B, which is the indicator. And actually, we probably want price to be above the indicator by a little buffer. We definitely don't want it to be equal to. So let's adjust this to just be A above B. And for a short trade, we would want A below B, right? But also, you probably want a little buffer between the two, right? So maybe you might want to wait for, the market to get 10 ticks above your stop loss indicator, something like that. So I can take the indicator and add that buffer, right? So I'll just say 10 ticks above it, just to kind of keep it simple there. So there we go. So once the closing price of a bar gets 10 ticks above the super trend, then the trailing actions will actually kick into play here. We'll start start working there. So, all right. Well, that's really all I had to do with all that explanation as well. That's all I needed to do. And so the next step is there's a little message down here. Since I'm using Bloodhound to generate trade signals, I do need to reload my chart so that way Bloodhound can get loaded into Blackbird. And as we can see, obviously these aren't real tradable entry signals. It's just so that we get, a signal every single time, something to work with there. So I need to turn the auto trader on, and let's see what this took a short trade here. So actually, let's close that out. And there we go. So now it just took a long trade because of the up bar. And yeah, we can actually see that because the super trend, right, is on the correct side of the market, that our stop loss had moved itself up instantly to the indicator. So, this would have happened like within a split second, but the stop loss would have started at a simple 25 tick stop loss, and then the trailing rules would kick in instantly, and then it moved itself up to the super trend. All right. And basically, there we have it. Well, it was really just that simple using Blackbird versus writing all that code, right? So, all right, well, guys, that did it for me. My part was really the easy part, the real simple stuff. So with that, I will turn it back over to Jeremy, and he'll wrap it up.
All right, Zach, if you don't mind just making me the presenter again.
Oh, yes, that's right. We got to switch this over here. All right, change presenters. And there you go, Jeremy.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, yeah, I just want to wrap up and say, again, the code that I presented earlier today, it was just about a week and a half worth of work, using, of course, a lot of knowledge that I've had developing systems or strategy management systems in the past. Now, something like Blackbird was several years of development, and depending which way you want to go, you can certainly harness a lot of that experience and a lot of that technology, kind of without having to go. I would sort of dub the harder route. But if you want to go that way, just if you're going to use my code that I presented, just make sure that you're aware that there are still a lot of other things that it currently does not handle, just because, again, outside the scope of the time that reasonably we'll be able to present in. Things like the order fills, the split fills, there's no order rejection handling, which may happen, with margin exceptions and that sort of thing. And the strategy does not pick up properly if you cancel your orders manually. It doesn't know how to adjust. So the way you would actually implement something like that is you would override the order changed event, or rather on order updated event, and tie that into the order manager, and then you can have custom code in there that knows its current state and take appropriate action when any one of these particular situations occur. Okay, so that's sort of just a general kind of direction that needs to be done to sort of take this to the more usable level. Okay, so in summary, that was, of course, a disclaimer. I just got to put that out there because I don't want people using this code to trade for real. It's just simply not, it's just not production ready. Okay, but what I really wanted to demonstrate again was the point of this whole webinar was to illustrate how, if you have a proper structure, it's actually very easy to create new features and functionality. And basically, you didn't get to see the process it took to come up with this code for this presentation, but it was a lot of just planning it out, writing it, testing it, and then restructuring and kind of going in this circular process. Right. So development actually is kind of it's a constant process, and that's a similar kind of approach you should take when you're developing anything. is just count on it not working the way you intend it to work the first time through, and instead just go for little baby steps and just try to build a something workable, and then modify it a little bit, iterate, and just keep going until you finally get to the point where you're happy with, or in fact maybe you'll never get to that point. Just keep adding new things to it. The other thing, of course, I want to impress upon you is having a good structure or design, if you will, is actually where the majority of the creative work happens, and it's much akin to having like a clean desk. Now, if you're kind of just learning coding on your own, maybe you encounter it just for the sake of learning to code NinjaScript. Perhaps you haven't had a chance to be sort of trained as like a formal software developer, and that's it's pretty typical. There's nothing wrong with that. But just be aware, like there's a difference, sort of like just knowing the NinjaScript aspect of it, and then also knowing the design aspect. It's sort of I guess the difference between an architect and maybe a carpenter, the carpenter being someone who executes the plan, but the architect is really where all the thinking goes in terms of how the house is designed, how usable it is, things like that. And same as really with coding is that's often a very overlooked part of software development. I've noticed in this sort of industry, the tendency is to just jump right in and try to code something. But you definitely want to sort of take a step back and learn and do a proper design before you start, and then that'll always end up with a better result. A good structure will always save you a lot of headache, and down the road, especially if you want to add new features or reuse your code that you've already vetted and used and tried, it's very easy to just take those components out, pop it into a new configuration, and away you go. So that's basically the end of this presentation. And I guess we didn't do too bad for time. I did kind of blaze through this, knowing that we'd probably be running over a little bit. But again, we had a lot of stuff to cover. I will again make this. I'm going to send this code to Shane, who will post it, and you guys can have access to it, and you can take a look at how I implemented certain things. And of course, that's our website if you're interested in our products. So Shane, Zach and I actually can't see the questions or in the feedback. But if perhaps we could do something where you maybe you read out some questions, and Zach and I can try to answer them.
Yeah, by all means, man. Thank you so much. That was awesome. They didn't cover any of this stuff in my 8th grade Apple II basic programming class.
Yeah, that's where I started too. When I was I was just in grade school at the time. But back then too, like software development was an emerging thing, and it took a lot of smart minds out there to start working on not just the coding aspect of it, but the design and architecture, and that really was an organic thing. It grew out of necessity as like bigger and bigger projects became commercialized and whatnot, and people couldn't just be writing in a little vacuum by themselves, and the necessity of working in teams became out of something just of the size of the applications that started to come out in the 90s and whatnot. And that's kind of when I started to learn how to code too.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see how it basically infiltrates every aspect of life.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah, it's so true. Yes. And actually, I just want to say it's a really exciting time to be in, technologically speaking, because there's so much work out there. Like if you want to develop tools and whatnot, there's so much framework and groundwork that you can use to harness and get so much done. And NinjaTrader is actually a really good example of that, because can you imagine how difficult it would be to create, if you want to create an auto trader from scratch, like reading the data coming in, managing all those multi-threaded connections, sending orders out to to brokers and translating that to, I get like, managing those sockets. So it's an incredible amount of work that NinjaTrader does. That when you write NinjaScript, you're harnessing all that, like even like an indicator, right? All the draw code for the plots and stuff. That's all done in DirectX, right? All that stuff is pretty much, the framework is there. You just have to call some simple APIs, and you can have a full-blown chart with price action, and like you can pretty up a chart with very few lines. So that's a really a good example of kind of harnessing something else that's been done and using it to accomplish your goals.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, man. We do have a couple technical questions here, and a lot of them are over my head, but I'm going to run them by you if you've got time.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Jeffrey wants to know, if he creates a strategy in the strategy builder and wants to sell his creation, how does he protect it and conceal his code and be able to sell the indicator or strategy that he creates?
Oh, good question. Okay, you're probably not going to like my answer, but I will say there is no such thing as protecting it 100%. Everything is crackable with enough time and effort. So the best you can do is sort of make it inconvenient enough for someone that they'd rather just spend the $50 or $100 or $200 or $700 or whatever your system costs than try to reverse engineer it or find a hacker that will do that. So really, you're looking at a deterrent. Now there are some obfuscation softwares out there that will basically try to mangle the code, and so it's practically unreadable. But if you don't do that kind of protection, by and large, .NET code is you just pop it into a disassembler and you can pretty much see the whole thing. So really, you're looking at ways to just mitigate it, not eliminate it. Like this one called .NET Reactor, you can look that one up. That's the one we use. There's a few of them out there, and to be honest, they kind of escape me at the moment. But yeah, there's some technologies that you can use that will take your compiled code and try to protect it. Just beware, it's not 100%, but you should never really try to shoot for 100%. You're just going to get yourself really frustrated if you try.
Yeah, let me kind of pipe in there and just finish that question off. Really what you need to do is contact NinjaTrader support and become a NinjaTrader vendor. NinjaTrader does in their documentation, they do partner with a obfuscator, software company, so you can get a discount on protecting your code through that company. And that's probably the easiest way to do it. Also, if you become a NinjaTrader partner, ecosystem partner, you can use their licensing as well. So you don't have to come up with your own licensing code, which is that is probably a bigger task than actually writing your strategy itself. So yeah, really the simple answer is contact NinjaTrader support, and they will provide you with all the elements that you need to do to set yourself up as a NinjaTrader vendor, and that'll be the easiest way to get it done.
Okay, excellent. Here's another one. Let's see. Andrea would like to know, backtesting in NinjaTrader has been designed for simple strategy. What is the solution you found to expose your strategy parameters to the backtesting module in order to work on optimization? And what if the parameters are scattered into multiple decoupled modules, for example, indicators, add-ons, and strategies?
Yeah, so the easiest way to do that is you will have to use one strategy to funnel all the parameters. So if you that is what we in software development call coupling. It's not as kinky as it sounds, but really all it is just you're basically making your object, or in this case the strategy, dependent on the different variables and have knowledge of those parameters of those different components. So you have to actually expose them through the strategy. It's not ideal, but that's really the only way to do it. So you would have your master custom strategy that has hook-ins to all these different modules, the strategy would have to be aware of the parameters that can be changed and then expose them as public properties. And then NinjaTrader can take those properties and use it for optimization.
Excellent, man. Okay, maybe a little more personal question if you've got time. You've obviously been coding for a long time now. I guess my question would be, at what point did you get interested in trading, and how did you get started in
it? Well, like everybody, the whole goal was to try to make money. I'll just be straight up front. I'm not a very good trader, and I found when I was looking at the charts and stuff like that, I found myself way more interested in looking at code and trying to write code to avoid having to look at charts. And then I finally just threw in the towel and said, hey, look, I think I'm way more interested in building tools for trading than actually trading itself. And so that's kind of how SharkIndicators was born. So I would say I have a very good book knowledge of trading and some experience of losing lots of money in it. But so I'm good enough to be dangerous, but I understand the terminology, and I rely on folks like Zach and Keith and Mike on our team to relay to me kind of what traders want. And then I firmly believe in probably so and the example I like to give all the time is say if you consider something like Adobe Photoshop. It's probably the de facto standard for photo editing. Now, the engineers that build Photoshop aren't necessarily artists themselves, right? They're not the ones that specialize in creating the imagery and manipulating images. They're the ones that engineer the tool to allow artists to express their own artistic talents. And so that's exactly how I view myself. I'm an engineer, a software engineer that likes to build the software tools to allow you folks that would rather focus on trading to express your own trading systems and whatnot, so that you can do what I couldn't do, which is make money with it. So
Excellent, man. All right, I got one more for you. The question that I had was, what do you see off in the future in terms of regarding AI, quantum computing, stuff like that? What do you see happening there?
It is very difficult to predict what could happen. It's no secret that Wall Street and a lot of large hedge funds invest heavily in AI because computers are just simply quicker than the human when it comes to making split-second decisions that would help give you an edge in trading. I honestly can't give an answer because I really don't know. All I can say is I'm very excited to see what could happen. It's really anybody's guess. 10 years from now, what the markets are going to look like. If it's just all going to be robots or what, I have no idea. My feeling is probably not. Especially on the retail side, there's always going to be the amateur investor that wants full control over how they invest/trade. But we're starting to see kind of all sorts of really crazy esoteric stuff coming out of Wall Street, where you're looking at nanosecond reactions and stuff that's just way outside the micro trades that are just too small and way outside the purview of most retail traders, right? Which they're fighting over just pennies. But you do it a million times, you'll make a lot of money. And for the most part, it won't really affect the retail trader. But it's a different ball game. That whole world is. I'll be the first to admit I don't have any real experience with that. I've read some pretty crazy things, and it just makes me say, "Wow, there's some pretty smart people." When it comes to making money, you'll get the smartest people working hard at it. So. I'm afraid I'm not really qualified to answer that question.
Well, dude, I appreciate the effort for sure, man. Thank you so much. Sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it is kind of humorous to think about that question in hindsight, because when Jeremy and I kind of first opened up Shark Indicators, we were both thinking that probably around now, basically 10 years later, that we would see some kind of simple implementation of an AI or a simple neural network implemented into NinjaTrader, or at least there would be some other vendor that would have something hooking directly into NinjaTrader, and we actually I haven't seen anything like that yet, so it just kind of shows, how difficult it is to really predict, what's coming down the road, as far as AI and neural networks and stuff like that, for trading for the retail people. We both kind of thought it would be here by now, but it doesn't seem to be, not yet. But it definitely will be coming. So, and if all you guys out there are excited, to be using a neural net or some kind of AI, well, you better bone up on your statistics, because it definitely requires a lot of statistical analysis to be able to use advanced tools like that. So,
right, this is a little off topic, but I just got to throw this out there. But there may come a time in our lifetimes where there's an AI that's comparable to human in terms of intelligence, and when you get to that point, like, I think the game will change everywhere. When you get AIs that are smart enough to create, basically, if a human's smart enough to create an AI that's smart enough to be as smart as a human, then by kind of like following that logic that the AI is smart enough to create other AIs. So there's a whole movement called this, not movement, I guess these are a think tank, or I don't know, cult. They're called the singularity. It's pretty interesting stuff, but if you Google it, you'll see what I mean. It's called the singularity point. It's the point where that happens.
Yeah, like the writing's on the wall, man.
Yeah.
Game over, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What do you do? What the whole knowledge industry will change. Anybody that's a software developer probably will be out of job at that point. I have no idea.
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be like a paradigm shift, man.
Yeah. Who knows? It's pretty wacky stuff.
All right, man. Thank you guys so much. Great stuff. Jeremy, Zach, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Folks, that about wraps it up. Be sure to join us for our next event on Thursday, February 25th with Trevor Harnett and Tradeabate, who will be discussing how to identify setups and targets using Market Profile. Don't forget to hit that like button on YouTube and head on over to Futures.io to continue the conversation with Jeremy and participate in the Battle Stations Challenge. And again, thank you for joining us.